squeezing tighter and tighter and tighter. And they were fighting with each other to get their hand closer to me to get the first donation. But the problem is I had no money. All I had was these sadhu robes that somebody gave me. And that was it. I had nothing. Well, I wanted to give them something, but I had nothing to give. They were screaming and screaming and screaming and getting angrier and angrier and angrier. And I didn't know much about leprosy, but I used to see about it in the movies. And usually lepers were kept in caves on some deserted island because it was contagious. And I was wondering if I was going to get leprosy too. They were touching me, there was blood getting on me, there was saliva getting on me. It was a culture shock. And I was alone. They kept me like that for about 20 minutes. Half of my mind was thinking, why are these people doing this to me? What did I do? And the other half of my mind was thinking that these people are totally discarded, rejected, and deserted from the whole world. They have nothing. They have every right to do anything they want to survive. I was just coming out of my teenage years at the time. Just turned 20. Finally, they searched me thoroughly. Several of them. They patted every part of my body to see if I had any money. If I did, they would have taken it. But when they saw I had nothing, they dispersed. And there was a sigh of relief as I took just a few steps. But then on my left side, I saw something that caused me to stop in my tracks. It was a very, very old leper woman. She was laying on her left side. Half of her head was kind of bald and the other was white hair. She had no nose. Her face was deformed and shriveled with disease and no fingers. She looked at me, stared right in my eyes, and I looked back at her. I saw in her eyes the love of a mother. She looked at me with such pity because she knew what I just had undergone from her people. And it was as she was looking at me, begging forgiveness from what her people had just done to me. And then she offered her pranams. And then put her hand out to offer me a blessing. A mother blessing a child. I was so overwhelmed by affection for this lady that I ran over to her, got down on my knees, and bowed my head so that she could put her hand on top of it to bless me. And as my head was down and her hand was on top, in the Hindi language she repeatedly spoke, "May God bless you, my child. May God bless you, my child. May God bless you, my child." I looked up. As I looked up, I saw a gigantic smile on her face. She had no teeth. But what a beautiful smile. Her face was lit with joy. The joy of giving. And from her eyes, tears were streaming. This may sound difficult for you to understand, but it's true. As I was looking at this deformed leper woman, I was thinking, she's the most beautiful person I've ever seen. She accepted me like a mother to a child. Unconditional. Not wanting anything from me. I saw in her face somebody who wanted to give a mother's love to someone for probably years and years and never had the chance to give it. And I was giving her that chance to give a mother's blessing to someone. And she was so grateful. She was so joyful. That's all she wanted. After I parted from her, I went up a little and came down to the bank of the Ganga. And I was looking at the ripples and the swirls of the waves. And a little fish jumped up. And I was feeling, this is so beautiful. I was thinking, what is God trying to teach me by making that fish jump up? And actually, if our hearts and minds are open to hear a message from the Lord, there's always a message for us to grow and to live and to gain wisdom with. It's just a matter of our receptivity. And I was thinking, how many millions and millions and millions of fish of all different colors and all different sizes are there underneath the surface of the Ganga? I only saw that one because it came up to the surface. I was thinking how many beautiful rocks and stones and how many vegetations and weeds and beautiful things are happening underwater. But all I'm able to see is what's on the surface. And isn't that the way life is? We see so much what's on the surface, but we're not able to perceive the incredible variegatedness and depths beneath the surface. Martin Luther King said he had a dream when instead of people seeing for his children on the basis of the color of their skin, they would see the content of their character. There is that saying, beauty is only skin deep. But actually, real beauty is something so much deeper than the skin. It's the heart. It's the character. I was thinking of people who tried to murder me when I was traveling through Turkey. People who tried to murder me when I was traveling through Afghanistan. I was thinking of people when I was a child who hated me because of a minority religion that I was born into. Now, this is all just superficial things. If we go deeper into why people are mean or why people are insecure, we'll usually find traumas and tragedies and victimizations that they've gone through that made them like that. And instead of hating them, we'll probably feel compassion for them. It is said we should hate the disease, but we should not hate the diseased. If my brother has a sickness, I hate the sickness, but I love my brother. Aham bija prajapita. It's a a universal principle that God is the father and mother of every living being. That means we're all brothers and sisters. If only we could just see below the surface of a person's physical, emotional, and mental state. And as I was looking into that current of Ganga, I was thinking, just a few minutes before, that leper woman, the ugliest body I'd ever seen, but the most beautiful person. She was one of my gurus. She taught me so much. Who am I? Who are all of you? Who is God? This is a deep subject. And so often, even in the name of religion, we become so attached to the external, superficial things and never really go deep into the essence of it. And instead of creating unity, it creates division. Instead of creating love, it creates hate. Instead of seeing people with equal vision, we see people according to my own egoistic conceptions. Saragrahi, to seek the essence. I didn't know that word then. But as I was sitting on the bank of the Ganges, I understood that lesson. It was a crucial experience for me to undergo, to carry on with my journey. In search of truth, in search of myself, in search of love. I traveled higher into the Himalayas to Uttarkashi. First I was in Dev-Prayag, and then I came to Dehradun, where I lived with Ananda Mahima, and then I went up to Uttarkashi. There I found a very, very nice cave. They have wonderful caves up there, if any of you would like to experience that type of life. And there I studied animals, because there were no people around. I was watching leopards, and I was watching snakes, deers and boars, and a lot of monkeys. They were my neighbors. And sometimes I was thinking, I was kind of scared to be living with scorpions would come in my cave sometime. I realized this is their home. I'm a visitor. Why do I have an ego to think that I'm better than them? I was asking these questions. They could kill me. Many of these, I can't kill them, but they could kill me. They're in a superior position. But one thing that I have a gift of as a human being is the power to question. Why is there suffering? Who am I? Who is God? What is the true purpose of life? And I realized in that cave that that's the real strength of being a human being. Not making bombs, not creating science and technology. These things could be good. But actually, the animals have their technology, better than ours in certain ways. It's like oftentimes America invents things, and then the Japanese, they learn how to take that and put it into the tiniest little sizes and make it work even better. Well, we create airplanes, wonderful airplanes, and they have radar controls, sorts of GPS, whatever, for navigation. But as I was thinking, in that cave, a little mosquito would land. I remember a little mosquito landed on me. And usually when you see a mosquito, you just think, oh, it may have malaria in India, or it may bite me. But I was in a very receptive state of mind. I was thinking, what am I supposed to learn from this mosquito? Oh, oceans we could learn. What is the technology of that mosquito? Mosquito doesn't know about it so much, but that God-given technology could fly. God put an airplane this big. Yes. And he doesn't need radar controls. I started a little fire, and there were so many mosquitoes flying around the fire. I remember when I was a little boy, I used to look up at the street lamp, and there would be thousands and thousands and thousands of mosquitoes swirling around, swirling around. You've all seen that? Have you ever seen two mosquitoes crash? Yes? We need to spend millions of dollars to make all these towers and radars and air traffic control, and then the air traffic controllers go on strike, and then the airlines can't fly anymore. And if they don't fly, then the airlines will crash. Yes? But mosquitoes, there's millions of them, within a few meters. And they're flying and swarming and flying and swimming, and they never crash. And they don't need a runway to take off. And they don't need a runway to land. If they did, it would make it much easier for us. We would know they're coming before they bite us. They'd have to go. They just land in a second. They have your blood and they're gone. What an incredible machine. What technology. What an incredible lesson. So as far as the science of aerodynamics, we cannot compete with the mosquito. What to speak of the birds and the flies. If a human could do that, we would be considered great yogis. If we could fly like a mosquito. And the strength of a lion. Samson fought a lion and won. We don't read about anybody else who can fight lions and win. Even the heavyweight champion boxers and wrestlers of the world put him in a ring with a lion. Finished. So animals could fly better than us. Many animals can fight better than us. I've seen some beautiful acrobat humans, but they can't do what these typical monkeys do that we see. Yes? They're incredible what they can do. They can lump, they can jump. So many tricks. We don't even notice it. But there is something very special I remember in Uttarkashi when I was meditating and contemplating. That humans can access that spiritual love, that spiritual compassion, that spiritual wisdom that is within our hearts through sincerely taking to a spiritual process. That's the most valuable gift we have. That's what really separates us from all other species. But at the same time, that's what really unites us with all other species. Bhagavad Gita tells Vidyavanaya Sampani Brahmani Kavi Hastini Suni Chaiva Sopakecha Pandita Samadarsha. Real wisdom is to see every living being with equal vision. Because we see the sacredness of life, a part of God in everyone. Whether one is male or female, black, white, red, yellow, brown, east or west, educated or uneducated, Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jew, Sikh, Parsi, Jain, agnostic, atheist, rich or poor. And the Bhagavad Gita extends that principle to see with equal vision a human, an elephant, a cow, a dog, a cat. Amaivam so jiva loke, because every living being is part of God, the Atma. Najayate mriyate vata kadachit, that the Atma, the soul, the living force within us is eternal. It is never born and never dies. It's Satchit Ananda, eternal, full of knowledge, full of bliss. That's who we are. And that's who everyone is. Wherever there's life is the presence of that Atma, that soul. To realize that within ourselves, we're able to perceive that essence within everyone. The universal brotherhood and sisterhood, not only of humanity, but of all species. Higher civilization is not about how high and beautiful our government buildings are. Higher civilization, from a yoga perspective, from a religious, spiritual perspective, is to the extent that inner propensity to love is unselfishly extended to all living beings. That is actually advancement in human civilization. And these were some of the lessons I was learning. I never learned them in school from PhD professors. But I was learning them from mosquitoes, and from cobras, and from monkeys, and from a leopard. Ultimately, I believed so strongly, it was God. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I knew he was there. She was there. I knew that the Lord was there. And I knew if I opened my heart, the Lord would reveal inner secrets of my own heart. It's actually quite amazing. The deepest, most profound secrets of the universe are concealed within each of our hearts. Raja Vidya Rajupuyam Pavitramitamantam. Krishna tells in Gita that this is the king of knowledge and the most secret of all secrets. Why is it such a secret? It's forever our nature to know these things. But we have forgotten. Constantly bombarded by weapons of mass distraction. We have forgotten who we are, what is within us, the beauty of life. And it's actually being revealed everywhere. If we just hear. In the Bible, I believe Jesus said, those who have ears should hear. What does that mean? Everybody's hearing, but do we really hear? Everyone's seeing, but do we really see? I met some yogis who were blind in the Himalayas and in Vrindavan. They were blind, but I realized by hearing from them and by seeing the character of their life that they were seeing infinitely more than I was with my eyes. They were seeing the beauty of their own soul. Even without eyes, they were seeing with their hearts the beauty of everyone else's soul. They were seeing God. Sometimes we're distracted so much by what the eyes see and the ears hear flesh feels. And we don't really take the time to understand the inner vision, the inner feeling, the inner sound that liberates us. And the blessing of these eyes and ears and the tongue is we can actually connect with those inner secrets by seeing through the eyes of the scripture and the saintly people, by hearing their words, by tasting the sweetness of these mantras and the names of God. From Uttarkashi I started going up to Badrinath, but because it was winter, the roads were closed with snow. So I came back down to Hrishikesh. There's many stories of what happened, but we don't have so much time. At one point I traveled down to Varanasi and Gaya and Bodh Gaya. And I remember, because I used to go on these third-class trains, which were, from a technical perspective, you weren't allowed in unless you bought a ticket. But from a practical perspective, they were so crowded with people that no sane ticket collector would even dare to try to get inside. There were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in a single car. There was probably double the times of people sitting on each seat and triple the times of people who were standing up. And even in the baggage racks, people were crunched up there. And I learned that the baggage racks were actually the most comfortable place to be. But they were rare to get. But the train stopped in Agra. So I was thinking, who comes to India without seeing the Taj Mahal? So I could get off the train and then get on any other train I want by jumping through a window and riding for free. And I remember the lesson I learned from seeing the Taj Mahal. Would you like to hear? It's a beautiful building of fine white marble. It's not so white anymore because of all the pollution from Delhi and all these other places. And there's a refinery, an industrial refinery in Mathura, just close. But in those days, it was very white marble with inlaid jewels, beautiful Persian gardens and fountains. And I was looking up in awe, thinking, what a masterpiece. And then I was reading about it. Someone gave me a little pamphlet about the history of the Taj Mahal. And what a different perspective I got. There was a king. His name was Shah Jahan, a Mughal king. And his wife, Mumtaz, I believe her name was, she gave him so many children. And then she died. And in honor of her and the children she gave him, he built the Taj Mahal as a tomb for her, with tens and thousands of workers. Because in those days, if you're a king, you just tell people what to do and they do it. There were no labor unions or anything like that, which are good. But then it talked about how one of his younger sons, Aurangzeb, wanted to take the throne. So he killed his elder brothers. He imprisoned some of the other elder brothers. And then he captured his father and put him in prison. And I was thinking, he built this incredible monument. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. And when he was in prison, he wasn't even allowed to see it. What really was the fulfillment and satisfaction of building this place? He honored his wife for giving him children, and the children were killing each other and abducting and imprisoning the father. If there's anything, that man must have suffered so bad. I'm a Swami, so I never had children. But I meet a lot of parents, and they tell me their problems. Well, one of the greatest problems is when a parent who loves their children see that their children hate each other. And I was thinking, what is really meaningful in life? To overcome greed, to overcome hate, to overcome the thirst for power, to actually learn how to love and be compassionate, that is monumental. I learned so much just by looking up at the Taj Mahal. I went to Varanasi, where I was staying at the Kashi Vishwanath, and I was praying to Lord Shiva, please show me my path. Please show me my guru. Please show me how I could reach you. Because I was living with yogis of different schools, and I was living with Buddhists, I was living with Hindu saints, and in the West I was studying at Christian monasteries and synagogues. Which is my path? I believed very deeply and sincerely in the oneness of the essence of all the great spiritual paths. But I understood I had to follow one. But I just couldn't understand. And I was praying to Shiva at Vishwanath on the banks of the river Ganga in Varanasi, please show me the way. It's a long story, but eventually I came to a city in Bihar called Patna. Have any of you ever been to Patna? You've been everywhere. My very old and dear friend. So happy you're here. I was living on the bank of the Ganga in a place called Collectory Ghat. This is another Ganga story. The first day I arrived there, because I would always sleep on riverbanks. Whenever I would get to a place, I would ask, where is the river? And sleep on the bank of the river. And if there was no river, I would go find a nice tree and sleep under the tree. But on the bank of the Ganga, it was very wide in Patna. I fell asleep late at night and woke up, and there were hundreds and hundreds of people at this ghat doing all sorts of pujas and singing kirtans and chanting mantras and doing all different types of rituals. It was really a festival. In those days, this was 1971. This is the way the day started every day. There were people playing musical instruments, shanais and sitars, and they were taking their baths, and they were taking their cows and their buffaloes to take baths, and they were singing songs, and they were doing pujas, and they were offering flowers and lamps to the Mother Ganga. It was really beautiful. And I looked up and standing right over me was this very ancient-looking holy man with a long white beard and white hair and saffron clothes. He looked down at me. I was laying down, just looking around. And he didn't speak English, but he invited me into his little temple. It was an old stone temple that just had two walls, and two sides were open, so that the Ganga was open, was in full view on both sides. There was no wall at all. And there were deities of Sita, Ram, Lakshman, Hanuman, very ancient in the temple. And he invited me to stay with him. His name was Radhanath-Swami-Media. And he called one of his disciples. Ram Sevak Swami was about 85 years old. I was 20 at the time. So he was older than my grandfather. But he treated me like a brother. It was actually very sweet. And one of his disciples, who was over 80 years old, Narayan Prasad, he spoke English. So he would translate for me. And Ram Sevak Swami, he was a devotee of Ram. He followed Bhakti Yoga. He was the first Bhakti yogi I met. I remember he told me his name, Ram Sevak Swami, meant, Sevak means one who serves. Says it means I'm the servant of Ram. And the greatest service that pleases Ram is to serve those who Ram loves. And Ram loves everybody. So he was with tears in his eyes, rolling down his beard, and folded palms, this tall, saintly, elderly saint. He was thanking me for coming to his temple so that he could serve me. Because that's how he could best serve Ram. So it was hard to leave. His hospitality was incredible. He didn't have anything, but his hospitality was incredible. And I remember, I'm going to tell a couple stories from, would you like to hear about this? I'll tell a couple stories about while I was living there before he lived alone, and I was with him. We slept on there was no beds. Everything was stone, big stones. So we just slept on a stone floor. And every now and then other old sadhus who were traveling around would come and stay with him. So at one time it was Ram Sevak Swami and this old sadhu who only wore a kopan. He didn't wear any other clothes, but just a loincloth. They went to sleep, and that night, swarms of gigantic, hungry, thirsty mosquitoes attacked. And they were swarming around. Even if they didn't bite, just the sound of their buzzing would keep you up. But they were biting. Every one of them was hungry. They were biting. And I was laying there, and all I had was a little chadar like this and a little lungi like this. So I'd cover myself. They would just, whatever, those little needles in their faces would just pierce right through my cloth. And they were biting and biting and biting, and after they'd biting, it was itching intensely. And they were just all around going There was no possibility of sleep. But then I looked at Ram Sevak Swami and this other sadhu. And as they were laying down, there were as many mosquitoes biting them as me. I was watching these giant mosquitoes. It's just... And I'd see them fill up and get fat with blood and then fly away, and then another one. I'll try to do it more accurately. And they were getting dozens and dozens of bites. And they were sleeping more peaceful than any person in America or Europe who takes 10 sleeping pills. They were absolutely peacefully sleeping, and they didn't take any sleeping pills. They didn't even smoke ganja or hashish or any of that stuff. They were real yogis. They were just sleeping. And meanwhile, I was just looking at them. And I didn't want to kill the mosquitoes because I was taught yogis don't kill. So I was thinking, when will that day be mine when I could be like them? That was my thoughts in those days. Where they could be happy in any situation. The Bhagavad Gita tells this beautiful verse, one who finds pleasure within, who rejoices within, could be happy in any situation of life, whatever happens in this external world of uncertainties. One day, this other sadhu, he had long matted hair that he kept like in coils on top of his head so he didn't trip over his hair because it was that long. And he decided to cook for Ram Sevak Swami and myself. So he went out to beg, because the only thing we ate was what we begged for. But it's amazing, when you beg with these great saints, when you go to beg from somebody, they actually, some people just say, hello, get out of here. But other people, they feel like God has come to bless them by giving them a chance to serve, to do seva. So this old sadhu, he was probably in his 60s. He decided to make khichdi, rice with dal with a few potatoes in it. And he got some cow dung, those cow dung patties, and broke it and started a fire and was cooking with dried cow dung. Just on the floor, he made a little stove out of some rocks and balanced a pot on some rocks and put the cow dung under it in the fire. And he cooked it and he cooked it, and I smelled it was burning, but that was detail. And then he came to serve it out. And when other sadhus found out, I think 3 more came, because they heard that this